Hello and welcome to the Sacred Truth channel. Today I want to take you into a reflection that goes far beyond anything you've heard about faith, religion, or history. Today I want to confront you with a simple question, but one that carries eternal weight. Why did Jesus have to die? But before we continue, I want to ask you something important. Subscribe to the channel now and turn on the notification bell, because this is not just a regular video. It's a journey that can transform the way you see life, pain, purpose, and even yourself. And as you watch, I don't want you to just listen. I want you to feel, reflect, and at the end, leave a comment sharing what impacted you the most, because this message may not be just another piece of content for you. It might be a turning point. When we think about the death of Jesus, many people only see a familiar scene, a man being crucified, suffering, rejected, abandoned. For some, it's just part of a religious tradition. For others, it's a symbolic story. But the truth is, the death of Jesus cannot be understood superficially, because it is not just a historical event. It is the center of all human existence. And this is where something begins that very few truly understand. The death of Jesus was not an accident. It was not a mistake. It was not a failure in the plan. It was not something that got out of control. On the contrary, it was necessary, intentional, planned from the very beginning. And that may be difficult to accept, because it raises an even deeper question. Why would something so extreme be necessary? Why would the solution to the human problem require something so radical, so painful, so final? To understand this, we need to go back long before the cross. We need to go back to the very beginning, because the cross does not start at Calvary. It starts at creation. In the beginning, when humanity was created, everything was different. There was no pain, no fear, no guilt. There was a perfect connection between man and God, a direct relationship, with no barriers, no distance, no noise. Humanity knew who they were, where they came from, and what their purpose was. There was clarity, identity, and peace. But along with that perfection, there was something essential, the freedom to choose, because without choice there is no true love. Without choice there is no real relationship. Without choice, there is no genuine purpose. And it was exactly that freedom that changed everything. In a moment that seems simple, but carries eternal consequences, humanity chose to follow their own path, chose to trust their own perception more than the truth established by God, chose to take control. And in that instant, something invisible happened, but with deep and irreversible effects, separation. It was not just disobedience. It was a rupture between humanity and God, a rupture between humanity and its own identity. A rupture that brought consequences that still exist today: fear, guilt, pain, insecurity, emptiness, confusion. And here is the point you need to understand clearly. The greatest problem of humanity is not external. It is internal. It is not lack of money. It is not lack of opportunity. It is not lack of knowledge. It is disconnection. Disconnection from God. Disconnection from truth. Disconnection from what truly gives life meaning. And that disconnection inevitably produces consequences, because every action has a result. Every choice has a cost. Every rupture creates impact. And the price of that separation is death. But not just physical death. It is spiritual death. It is living without connection. It is existing without real purpose. It is carrying an emptiness that nothing can fully fill. And maybe now you are starting to realize something. This is not just an ancient story. This describes the human reality even today. How many times have you felt empty, even when you had everything? How many times have you tried to fill something inside you with external things, and it didn't work? How many times have you realized that even when you try to do what is right, there is still an internal struggle that never fully disappears? This is not a coincidence. This is the result of that disconnection. And this is exactly where the question becomes even more intense. If the problem is so deep, how can it be solved? Throughout history, humanity has tried to answer this question in many ways. Through rules, through religion, through good works, through personal effort. But there was always something incomplete. There were always failures. There were always setbacks. Because the problem was never just behavior. It was nature. You can try to change your actions, but you cannot fully change who you are inside. You can try to do good, but you cannot completely eliminate the evil within. You can try to get closer to God, but there is always something that prevents that full connection. And this creates a paradox. Humanity knows what is right, but cannot live it consistently. And this reveals something powerful and uncomfortable at the same time. Humanity cannot solve its own problem, and it is exactly at this point that the death of Jesus begins to make sense. Because if the problem was superficial, the solution would be simple. But since the problem is deep, the solution must be radical. And here is the truth many try to avoid. Someone had to pay the price for that rupture. Someone had to restore that connection. Someone had to do what humanity cannot do alone. But that raises another difficult question. Who could do that? It could not be just anyone, because everyone carries flaws. Everyone has imperfections. Everyone is part of the problem. So how could someone who is also broken fix something so deep? The answer is simple, and at the same time revolutionary. They couldn't. Someone different was required. Someone without guilt. Someone without flaw. Someone who was not inside the problem, but was willing to enter it. And this is where everything begins to point to something greater. Something that is not just human. Something that is not just logical. Something that is not just historical, but something divine. And maybe in this moment, you are beginning to realize that the death of Jesus was not just an isolated event. It was the answer to the greatest crisis of human existence. But there is still something we need to understand. Because knowing that someone had to pay the price does not explain everything. The most important question still remains. Why Jesus? Why did he have to die and not someone else? And that is exactly what we are about to explore next. But before we continue, I want you to do something. Subscribe to the channel now if you haven't already. And in the comments, write, I want to understand, because this journey is not just about information. It is about transformation. The problem of humanity is not external, it is internal. It is not behavior, it is nature. It is not just what we do, it is who we are. There is a rupture, a separation between humanity and God, and that separation demands a response. It cannot be ignored. It cannot be disguised. It cannot be solved through human effort. And this is where everything begins to deepen. If there is a debt, it must be paid. If there is a rupture, it must be restored. If there is a separation, someone must build a bridge. But that bridge could not be built by someone who is also broken. This is the point that changes everything. Humanity cannot save itself because it is part of the problem. It is like someone in prison trying to free another prisoner. Both remain trapped. No matter how hard they try, no matter how much effort they put in, no matter how much they want it, the limitation remains. And that is exactly why the solution had to come from outside. It had to come from someone who was not contaminated by the same flaw. Someone who did not carry the same guilt. Someone who was not under the same consequence. And that leads us directly to Jesus. But here is something you need to understand deeply. Jesus did not come just as a teacher, an example, or a spiritual leader. He came with a specific purpose, a purpose that was defined long before he was born. He came to be the sacrifice. And that word may sound strong, but it is essential to understand everything. From the very beginning of history, whenever there was error, whenever there was rupture, whenever there was sin, something had to be given as a substitute. Something had to represent the cost of that failure. Because error is never neutral, it always produces consequences. And throughout history, we see this represented in many ways. Sacrifices were made, not because God needed something, but because humanity needed to understand a deep truth. Error has a price. But all those sacrifices had a limit. They were temporary. They were incomplete. They were symbolic. They pointed to something greater, but they did not solve the problem permanently. And that reveals something very important. The final solution had not yet come. And this is exactly where Jesus enters. Not as another sacrifice, but as the final sacrifice. And that changes everything. Because unlike any other, he was not just someone offering something. He was the sacrifice itself. And here is the deepest part of all. Jesus did not die only because of sin. He died in the place of the sinner. That is substitution. That means what was meant for humanity was placed on him. The guilt that was not his, the consequence that was not his, the pain that was not his, all of it he took upon himself. And this leads us to a truth that challenges all human logic. Why would anyone choose to do this? Why would someone perfect choose to suffer for the imperfect? Why would someone without guilt choose to carry the guilt of others? Why would someone choose to die for people who many times don't even recognize it? There is only one answer: love. But not the kind of love the world understands. Not a love based on fleeting feelings. Not a love conditioned by reciprocity. Not a love that depends on deserving. It is a love that decides. It is a love that gives itself. It is a love that acts even when it is not returned. And that is exactly the kind of love we see on the cross. Jesus was not forced. He was not surprised. He was not a victim of circumstances. He chose. And that completely changes how you understand the cross. Because it was not just something that happened to him. It was something he decided to do. And here is something you need to reflect on deeply. If he chose, then it means there was a reason strong enough to justify extreme pain, a reason great enough to justify the cross, a reason deep enough to justify death. And that reason involves you. Yes, you, because the death of Jesus was not generic. It was not distant. It was not impersonal. It was specific. For every person, for every failure, for every moment of error, for every decision that caused rupture. And maybe now you are beginning to realize something that changes everything. This is not just about history. This is about you. And this leads us to another extremely important point. On the cross, we do not just see suffering, we see justice being fulfilled. Because God does not ignore error. He does not pretend it didn't happen. He does not simply erase it without consequence. If he did, there would be no justice. But at the same time, God does not only punish, he offers a solution. And that solution is where justice and mercy meet. On the cross, justice is satisfied and mercy is released. The error is dealt with, but love remains. The consequence is real, but hope is also real, and this creates something completely new. A bridge between humanity and God. A bridge that no longer depends on human effort, but on what has already been done. And that completely changes how you understand faith, because now it is not about trying to be perfect. It is not about trying to deserve. It is not about trying to reach the impossible. It is about recognizing what has already been done and accepting that reality. But here comes a critical point. Because even with all of this, not everyone accepts it. And that reveals something deep about the human heart. Even in the face of the greatest demonstration of love, there is still resistance. There is still doubt. There is still rejection. And that happens because accepting the cross requires something difficult. Recognizing that you need it. Recognizing that you cannot do it alone. Recognizing that there is a flaw you cannot fix by yourself. And that confronts human pride. But at the same time, it sets you free. Because the moment you recognize this, you stop trying to carry a weight you were never meant to carry. And that is exactly where everything begins to change. But there is still something we need to understand. Because so far we have talked about the death, but we have not yet talked about what happened after. And that is essential. Because if the story ended at the cross, something would still be missing. There would still be doubt. There would still be uncertainty. But the story does not end there. And before we continue, I want to ask you something simple but important. Subscribe to the channel now and turn on the notification bell. Because messages like this are not common. And if this is reaching you, it's not by accident. And leave in the comments, I choose to understand. Because what we're about to talk about is not just about what happened. It's about what it means for you today. Up to this point, we've understood something essential. There was a problem that humanity could not solve on its own. There was a real deep internal separation. And Jesus came exactly for this. To take a place that was not his and pay a price we could never pay. But now we arrive at the point that changes everything. Because if the story ended at the cross, there would still be doubt. We could still ask, was it enough? Did it really work? Was death the end? Or just another tragedy? And this is exactly where everything transforms. Because the cross was not the end. It was the beginning. After the death came silence. A heavy silence. A silence that seemed to confirm everything people feared. For the disciples, it seemed like everything was over. They had seen miracles. They had heard words never spoken before. They had believed. And now everything seemed lost. The body was in the tomb. Hope seemed buried. Fear took over. Doubt grew. And that silence felt final. But what no one realized is that the silence was not empty. It was preparation. It was transition. It was the moment between sacrifice and victory. And this carries a powerful lesson for your life today. Not every silence means absence. Many times, silence is where transformation is happening, even when you cannot see it. And then something happens, something that completely changes the course of history. The stone is rolled away. The tomb is empty. What seemed impossible becomes real, the resurrection. And this is not just a detail. It is not just another miracle. It is the confirmation of everything. The resurrection proves that death did not win. It proves that the sacrifice was accepted. It proves that the debt was paid. It proves that the connection was restored. And here is the most powerful truth of all. Jesus did not just die for you. He won for you. And that changes everything. Because now it is no longer about trying. It is about access. It is no longer about effort. It is about grace. It is no longer about living, trying to reach something impossible, but living from something that has already been accomplished. And maybe now you begin to realize something deep. The death of Jesus was not just to forgive you. It was to transform you, to give you a new identity, a new direction, a new life. But here is the most important point of all, and perhaps the hardest too. All of this is available, but not everyone lives it. Because there is a difference between knowing and living. You can know this entire story. You can understand every detail. You can even believe. and still continue living the same way. And that happens because transformation requires decision. The cross opens the way, but you have to choose to walk it. The resurrection brings life, but you have to decide to live it. And this is where the message stops being general and becomes personal. Because now it is no longer about what happened to Jesus. It is about what you are going to do with it. Will you keep trying to fix everything on your own? Will you keep carrying guilt that has already been paid? Will you keep living disconnected even with the way open? Or will you decide to live differently? Because the truth is this: most people do not reject the cross because they don't understand it, but because they understand it and don't want to change. And that is confronting, but at the same time freeing, because the moment you decide to accept this truth, something begins to change inside you. You stop trying to prove your worth and start living with purpose. You stop carrying weight and begin to experience freedom. You stop living on autopilot and start living with awareness. And that does not mean everything becomes easy, but it means everything gains meaning. Pain gains purpose. Struggles gain direction. Difficulties stop being just obstacles and become part of the process of transformation. And that is exactly what the cross and the resurrection represent. Not the end of pain, but the beginning of a life with meaning. And now I want to ask you a question. A simple question, but one that can define everything. What are you going to do with this? Will you hear it and continue as always? Or will you allow it to transform the way you live? Because this is not just a message to be watched. It is an invitation. An invitation to live differently, to think differently, to decide differently. And maybe right now something inside you is being confronted. Maybe you are realizing things you never considered before. Maybe you feel like you can't ignore this anymore. And this moment is important, because there are moments in life when you are exposed to truth in a way that cannot be ignored. And what you do after that defines everything. So now, I want you to do something. If this message spoke to you, write in the comments, "I choose to live this." Subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. And continue on this journey, because the death of Jesus was not the end. It was the beginning. And the resurrection was not just a miracle. It was a declaration that life can be different, that transformation is possible, that connection can be restored. And in the end, it all comes down to this. It's not about how much you know, it's about how much you live. Because the cross opened the way, the resurrection confirmed it, and now the choice is yours.